Hi friends, this is Mrs. Heather and welcome back from fall break. You have made it to Cycle 2, Week 7 today. Fantastic! If you're looking for a specific subject, feel free to check out the timestamps in the video description or comments and jump there. Otherwise, let's get started. Let's kick things off with English. Tell me the possessive pronoun adjectives. The possessive pronoun adjectives. And we are using the tune, My God is so big, so strong and so mighty, there's nothing my God cannot do. Because my is the first word on our list today. My God is so big, my, your, his, her, it's our, your, their. My God is so big, my, your, his, her, it's our, your, their. Possessive pronoun adjectives, possessive pronoun adjectives. My God is so big, my, your, his, her, it's our, your, their. Fantastic. So with one pointer finger for the singular and two pointer fingers for the plural, just like we've been doing every week of the pronouns, let's learn our possessive pronoun adjectives. My, your, his, her, its, our, your, their. Good job. And we are going to put that with our tune. My God is so big. My, your, his, her, its, our, your, their. My God is so big. My, your, his, her, its, our, your, their. Possessive pronoun adjectives, possessive pronoun adjectives. My God is so big, my, your, his, her, it's our, your, their. Yes, great job. And another reason that we're using this tune is because my God, that phrase works with all of the words on our list. Let's say that together. So my God, your God, his God, her God, its God, our God, your God, their God, all of those work. They are possessive pronoun adjectives. Great job. Let's move on to science. Today we are asking the question, what are 6 forms of pollution? 6 forms of pollution are noise, air, water, land, thermal, radioactive pollution. Let's put that to a song, shall we? Today we are using a song that has the word ears in it because the first word on our list of pollution is noise, and we're going to point to our ears. So to help us remember that, we're going to use the tune. Do your ears hang low? Do they wobble to and fro? And it goes a little something like this. Noise, air, water, land, thermal, radioactive. Noise, air, water, land, thermal, radioactive. Noise, air, water, land, thermal, radioactive. Forms of pollution. All right, let's learn those motions together. Noise, noise. So point to your ears. Now with how quickly this song is, I'm just going to point to my ears. But if you want to sound noisy, you'd point to your ears and flick out like it's very noisy, noisy, noisy. Noise, air, we're going to take our 2 open hands and move around like the air and the wind is blowing. So noise, air, water, we're making a W and tapping our chin twice. Water. Land, we're taking a big flat hand and hovering over the land. Land. Thermal, for thermal, we're going to have one hand here like a thermometer and the other pointer finger going up and down like the temperature is going up and down. This is the ASL sign for temperature to help us remember thermal. 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 Great, so we have noise, air, water, land, thermal. For radioactive, we're doing something slightly different because as we learned in our sunprint exercise today, radioactive materials have a very high energy, and that's why they can be so damaging. They're very, very fast. And so for radioactive, we're simply taking our pointer finger up and down very quickly like a high energy wave. Awesome. And then pollution, we're making the sign for dirty, which is wiggling your fingers under your chin, and your face can express that you think it's gross and dirty. And then the sign for spread, which is taking your hand and going out, because pollution is putting dirty and harmful things into this beautiful environment God gave us and spreading them, and there's a lot of ramifications for that. But the good news is the first step is simply to learn about it so that we can combat it. So good job learning the 6 forms of pollution. Let's sing them together one more time to the tune, Do Your Ears Hang Low? Are you ready? Fantastic. Noise, air, water, land, thermal, radioactive. Noise, air, water, land, thermal, radioactive. Noise, air, water, land, thermal, radioactive. Forms of pollution. Forms of pollution. Great job! Wonderful job, friends. Let's move on to Latin. Today we are learning the first conjugation endings perfect tense. When I think of the word perfect, you know who I think of? Jesus. We talk in our house all the time about how the only perfect person who has ever walked this earth is Jesus. Jesus is perfect. So let's remember that as we learn our first conjugation endings perfect tense. Jesus is perfect. The sign for Jesus is taking your middle fingers and touching your opposite hand in the middle of your palm to remind us of where he was nailed to the cross. So Jesus, the sign for perfect, is making the F or the A-OK sign here and going forward. So Jesus is perfect. Jesus is perfect. Now, what's really helpful as well, when you say Jesus, we're going to hold that E sound because the E sound is the first sound in our new list for the perfect tense. So Jesus is perfect. Great job. The first word is E. E. Now we could make an ASL sign E, but because we're using Jesus is perfect to help us as our brain trigger to remember the perfect tense, we are just going to do the first part of Jesus as we say E and think of Jesus. So E, E, good job. Next is pretty silly, isti. And that to me sounds like it stinks. It stinks. Ew, it stinks. I like it. Sti like stinks. I hope it doesn't stink at your house right now, but we're gonna wave our hand in front of our nose like it stinks for isti. 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 Good job. So we have E, isti. Now, because we've been learning all of our pronouns and we've done this sign for it in English, we're just going to simplify things and use the same sign for Latin. So point down and say it. It. Great job. So you have E, isti, it. E, isti, it. Fantastic. Next is imus. Imus. To me, that sounds like the end of him and us. And again, from English, we can use the same signs to help us remember Latin. So we're going to point and say im, like the end of him, im, and then point with 2 fingers and say us. Im, us, im, us, imus, imus. Great job. So we have the first conjugation, perfect tense. We have E, isti, it, imus. Fantastic. Next is istas. Istas. Now this one is very fun. sounds to me like the end of the word smartest. Smartest. And I know you're pretty smart. You're learning all of this. You are very, very smart. God gave you an amazing brain. So smart is taking your middle finger, pointing to your forehead, and then flipping it out. So smartest, smartest, ist, to help us remember smartest. Good job. Ist, us. Ist, us. We're just going to point to us again because it sounds like that in the istus. Istus. There you go. Good job. Ist like smartest, us like us. Fantastic. So we have the first conjugation endings, perfect tense because Jesus is perfect. We have isti, it, imus, istus. Fantastic. Last we have errant. In science today we did this for air, taking two palm hands and flowing back and forth. We're going to use the same one to help us remember air. Errant. For runt, it makes me think of a little bitty runt of the litter when in terms of animals, maybe a little pig or something like that. So we're just going to take our hands and hold them together like we're holding the little tiny runt of the litter, a little animal in our hands. So errant. Errant. Awesome job, guys. You are learning so much Latin this year. So let's put it all together. Are you ready? Tell me the first conjugation endings, perfect tense. Remember that Jesus is perfect. Jesus starts with E, right? The sound E. All right. E, isti, it, imus, istus, errant. First conjugation, perfect tense. Fantastic job. Wonderful job, friends. Let's move on to history. This week we get to learn about the Reformation. Tell me about the Reformation. And I'll sing the whole song and show you all the motions first, and then we'll break it down, okay? In 1517, Martin Luther began the Protestant Reformation by printing the 95 Theses that made Pope Leo X excommunicate him. Later, John Calvin joined the Reformation. This is how it all began. In 1517, Martin Luther began the Protestant Reformation. Awesome! This is such a fun song and such an awesome person to learn about in the history of our faith. So in 1517, now there are two options for this. You can just do 15, or you can do both 15 and 17. Mamas, you know your kiddos the best, so whichever one works for you. For 15, take your hand pointing towards yourself and then bend your fingers. 15, 15. Great. If you'd like to also sign 17, then that's connecting your ring finger with your thumb and then flicking it twice. 17, 17. So you can do in 15, 17, or in 15, 17. Fantastic. For Martin Luther, there are so many awesome signs we can do for him, but I want to sign a part of the Bible. The word Bible is Jesus and then opening a book. I'm just going to do the book part just for time's sake. So a huge part about Martin Luther is he really studied his Bible. And that was so important. Here is what was happening around the time of Martin Luther. Imagine this. Imagine if you walked into church and your priest was saying that the way to have Jesus and the way to have salvation, to be saved, was if you gave him money to buy a letter of indulgence. What if your pastor told you that? Would you believe that? And how would you know not to believe that if you don't? What would you do? Would you go home and talk to your parents? Would you go home and read your Bible because the Bible is God's true word? That's what Martin Luther did. He went to his Bible, to God's true word, when he did not know whether or not what was being taught was correct, was really true. And you know what he discovered? This amazing discovery that salvation is a free gift, and it is through faith, and it is through grace, and it is through Jesus alone. It is not through anything else. And so that is why we're going to open our Bible, because what began the whole Protestant Reformation was really Martin Luther coming to God's Word, diligently seeking truth, and then helping the whole church to understand that. Awesome. So we have in 1517, Martin Luther, and we're just reading our Bible like he did, began. So this is the ASL sign for begin. You take your pointer finger like an ignition in a vehicle and turn it. It's between your pointer finger on your other hand and the other three. Began. So Martin Luther began the Protestant Reformation. And this is what the CC Timeline song uses. So we're just going to keep it all the same. Jesus again is taking your middle finger on the palm of each hand. Jesus, great, because he is the center of the whole Reformation. And then Reformation is change. We're taking our fingers, bending them, and then we're doing like a 180 change. We spin them around each other for Reformation. So Protestant Reformation, fantastic. By printing, so the sign for printing is taking your thumb and pointer finger together and then pretending your other hand is like paper and they're printing on the paper. By printing the 95 Theses. So the 95 Theses were statements that Martin Luther carefully crafted, and a huge part is that salvation is through faith. And so we are signing only faith to describe his 95 Theses. Only is taking your pointer finger and flipping it, pointing out and then pointing in. Only, like sola, only. And then faith is taking your two F hands. One is flat in front of you, the other touches your forehead and then comes down and taps on the other hand. Like you are choosing to put your faith in something like Jesus, right? So the 95 Theses, So far in history we have in 1517, Martin Luther began the Protestant Reformation by printing the 95 Theses. Fantastic. Now this next part is sort of fun and sort of silly. It starts with debate. It starts with a heavy debate. So take your pointer finger and your other flat hand and go back and forth, like two sides debating and going back and forth. This is the sign for debate. And we're using it as we're talking about the Pope, because what Martin Luther was initially doing when he posted the 95 Theses on the door of the church was asking for a healthy and intelligent debate. In that day, did you know that the way you would ask someone for a debate would actually be to post your points on the door? In the academic world, that was asking for debate, and that was what Martin Luther was trying to do. At first, he was just trying to have a healthy debate within the church to make change, to focus back on truth and the Bible before they kicked him out. Because they did not want that healthy debate. They just wanted to kick him out. So that's what we're going to do. This is not official ASL after this. Debate, and then just point your finger sternly and point out like, get out of here for excommunicate. So we have, in 1517, Martin Luther began the Protestant Reformation by printing the 95 Theses that made Pope Leo X excommunicate him. Good job. He's like, get on out of this church, huh? Later, John Calvin, we're doing the sign for J. John Calvin, we're doing the sign for C. So John Calvin, joined. We're just doing a come on, friend, come join us sign. Not an official ASL sign, but it's fun. So come on. John Calvin joined the Reformation. This is how it all began. We're just gonna put our hands up like this is how it all began. Like we're teaching someone, this is how it all, and then began. We're just doing the same sign for begin. Like you're starting your engines. This is how it all began. In 1517, Martin Luther began the Protestant Reformation. Woohoo! You have learned so much. Great job. Awesome. Let's move on to geography. We are learning European peninsulas. European peninsulas. Do you know what a peninsula is? It goes out and is surrounded by water on 3 sides. So to make our peninsulas, we're just going to put our arms together and hold our hands together, however you'd like to do that. Let's learn the European peninsula, shall we? Iberian Peninsula, Balkan Peninsula, Scandinavian Peninsula, Apennine Peninsula, Iberian Peninsula, Balkan Peninsula, Scandinavian Peninsula, Apennine Peninsula. Awesome job. So we're using the tune A Sailor Went to CCC because it reminds me that we're talking about water here, and a peninsula, remember, is surrounded by water on 3 sides. For the Iberian Peninsula, you're going to your left. On the video here it's opposite, so it looks left to you, or to your west, because that Iberian Peninsula is around Spain. Next, we have the Balkan Peninsula, and that is around Greece. So go east or to your right. Iberian Peninsula, Balkan Peninsula. Great. For Scandinavian, go up or north because that's around Norway and Sweden. Scandinavian Peninsula. And then for Apennine, just come down in the middle. That's around Italy. Apennine Peninsula. So tell me the European peninsulas one more time to the tune A Sailor Went to CCC. Iberian Peninsula, Balkan Peninsula, Scandinavian Peninsula, Apennine Peninsula, Iberian Peninsula, Balkan Peninsula, Scandinavian Peninsula, Apennine Peninsula. Awesome, so that will help us remember not only the peninsula list, but also their relative locations, north, south, east, and west. Great job. Woohoo! You know what that sound means. It's math time, and today we are learning the 13s. So let's see what kind of exercise we should do. Calf raises, okay? Going up and down on your calves, and then we'll sing it twice through. So let's see, one more. Plies. We'll do a big plie where we just bend our knees, okay? All right, we'll get some good leg exercise in today with the 13s. This tune is to Jolly Old St. Nicholas, lean your ear this way, in case you're curious. So tell me the 13s. 13, 26, 39, 52, 65, 78, 91, 104, 117, 130, 143, 156, 169, 182, 195. Great job! Let's practice our 13s again, doing a plie. Ready? Okay. 13, 26, 39, 52, 65, 78, 91, 104, 117, 130, 143, 156, 169, 182, 195. Yes, good job. Have made it to timeline. Let's add on for week 7. One of my favorite parts in this entire song is Jesus the Messiah. For Jesus, again, take your middle finger and point to the opposite palm in the middle where he would have had the scars from being nailed to the cross. Jesus, Jesus. For Messiah, make an M, which is your thumb after your 3 fingers and before your pinky, and take that from your left shoulder down to your right hip. This is the sign for many types of royalty. We're using it for Messiah. So from your left shoulder to your right hip with the M for Messiah. And then there's this beautiful point in the music where we just get to praise God. So let's raise our hands and look up, and you can even like shake your hands at the end if you want. So we have Jesus the Messiah. Fantastic. Then year 1 AD, just make a 1. Year 1 AD, year 1 AD, year 1 AD. Pentecost in the early church. Pentecost, we're making the signs for pointing to your tongue and fire. So we're not going to actually touch our tongue, but point to your tongue and then fire, make like little flames with your hands going up. Pentecost, Pentecost, tongue, fire, Pentecost. Fantastic. The early church, we're making a C for church, and it was founded on a rock. So make a fist with the opposite hand and place the church on the rock. In the early church, in the early church. So Jesus the Messiah, year 1 AD, year 1 AD, year 1 AD. Pentecost in the early church. Great job. Persecution is fun. We're just pretending to fight. Persecution. Persecution. Good job. Spreads the gospel. Make a G, which is your thumb and pointer finger flat. And then your opposite hand is going to be like the Bible book, and we're turning the pages. Spreads the gospel. Spreads the gospel. So persecution spreads the gospel. Pentecost in the early church. Persecution spreads the gospel. Great job. Herod's temple destroyed by Titus. Make the T, which is putting your thumb after one finger before your other 3. That's for the T for temple. And the temple, we're putting it on the rock again. Herod's temple destroyed. We're ripping something apart, ripping it apart, destroying it. Herod's temple destroyed. Herod's temple destroyed by Titus. Just make another T, by Titus. Diocletian divides the Roman Empire. Diocletian, we're making the letter D, which is taking your pointer finger up and circling your other fingers like a lowercase d. Diocletian divides. Take your 2 hands, put your pinky of your first on top of your pointer of your second, and take them apart. Divides. Divides. For the Roman Empire, we're doing an R. For the Roman Empire. Diocletian divides the Roman Empire. Next, Constantine legalizes Christianity. We're simply making a C for Constantine. Constantine. Constantine legalizes Christianity. And again, we're doing the sign for Jesus, who is the center of Christianity. So Constantine legalizes Christianity. Great job. India's Gupta dynasty. You remember this, point to the dot on your forehead for India. For Gupta dynasty, this was known as the Golden Age of India. So we're making the sign for gold, which is pointing to your ear, making the Y for yellow, and dangling it down like a gold earring to represent gold. India's Gupta dynasty. Do you think you can put that all together for Timeline Week 7? I think you can too. Let's do it. We have Jesus the Messiah. Year 1 AD, year 1 AD, year 1 AD. Pentecost in the early church. Persecution spreads the gospel. Herod's temple destroyed by Titus. Diocletian divides the Roman Empire. Constantine legalizes Christianity. India's Gupta dynasty. Yes, you did it. Great job. Wow, you did awesome. Give yourself a pat on the back. Good job. And thank you again so much for choosing to spend your time with me today to learn CC. I don't take that lightly. I know there's lots of options out there, so I really appreciate you and you joining me today. If you like this video, feel free to give it a like, comment, and subscribe if you would like to stay in the loop for upcoming videos. Feel free to also check out my playlist of all the weeks, week 1 through 7 for this cycle, and I'll be posting week 8 pretty soon. So I will see you next time. Have a great one. Bye-bye.